The story opens with a woman narrating a local tale she heard when she first arrived on the island. She says the story is about a fisherman and his pregnant wife. One day, during a violent storm, his wife fell into the sea. He tried to save her, but failed. After she was gone, he never stepped on land again. He kept searching the ocean, hoping to find her. But another storm eventually took his life too. Some people claim they've seen the woman's spirit wandering near the water, almost as if she's trying to return and live the life she once dreamed of. The narrator calls it a sad story, but then says she sometimes wonders if the woman didn't actually drown. Maybe she found another way out. Maybe she was one of the lucky ones. Right after this narration, we see a boat in the ocean and two women fighting each other. Then the scene cuts. What this all means becomes clear at the end of the film. Now the main story begins. We are in the Cayman Islands, where we see Eve Simmons returning from a swim. She looks a bit disoriented, but her husband Peter Simmons is waiting for her on the beach. It's clear they deeply love each other, and their life together seems stable and comfortable. Peter and his boss, Salvador Ranza, have built a successful company here, and the couple is doing well financially. The entire story takes place on this tropical island. Peter and Eve live in a beach house, and Peter often talks about their bright future. He believes they'll soon buy their own dream home, and by next spring, he wants to take Eve anywhere in the world she wishes to go. Eve is also close to Salvador's wife, Chelsea, and the two women often spend time together. One day, while walking along the beach, Eve quietly tells Chelsea that she thinks she might be pregnant, and she hasn't told Peter yet. Chelsea is genuinely happy to hear this. When Chelsea stepped away to get something, Eve noticed a fisherman's boat in the distance. The moment she looked at it, she felt a strange flash of memory, almost like something bad had once happened to her. But before she could think more, a local woman called out to her, asking if she was okay. When Eve looked back, the boat had vanished. The next day, Eve went for a pregnancy test, and it confirmed she was expecting. Peter was extremely happy, though Eve still hadn't told him the truth, and we later learn why. That night, Peter's boss and a few employees came over for a small party. They often had fun gatherings like this and enjoyed their island life. But after everyone left, Eve suddenly realized she had suffered a miscarriage. She was completely shattered. This had happened to her before, and it was the reason she hadn't told Peter. She feared the same pain returning. Heartbroken, Eve rushed outside and cried uncontrollably. In that moment, she saw a woman standing in the water, staring directly at her. The sight deeply unsettled her, and Eve quickly went back inside. Back at home, Eve still felt as if that strange woman was following her. She even saw her again, which frightened her. She told Peter, and he searched around with a flashlight, but found no one. He suggested maybe it was just someone walking on the beach. The next day, Eve went to work. She was a receptionist at Peter's company. Later, she shared her grief with Chelsea. Eve said she didn't want to tell Peter about the miscarriage because she couldn't face going through that pain again. Chelsea comforted her, telling her not to lose hope. That same day, Eve saw the mysterious woman again on the beach. That night, Peter, his boss, and their friends were partying at a bar. There, Peter met the same mysterious woman Eve had been seeing. Their conversation isn't shown. Meanwhile, Eve was at home in the bathtub when she had a disturbing dream. The next morning, her favorite mug was missing. Later at the office, she saw the mysterious woman again, staring directly at her. Terrified, she told Peter once more, but he still didn't believe her. Eve started noticing her belongings changing or disappearing. In her Jeep, small shoes, she remembered, were suddenly replaced by a toy turtle, something she didn't recall buying. The next morning, while making tea, she asked Peter why her favorite mug had been replaced. Peter insisted that the one she was holding was her favorite mug and said she bought it herself. Eve was sure she never did. Things got worse when Peter claimed they bought the mug from the store near the place where they got married. Eve remembered their wedding taking place in Amsterdam, but Peter said that wasn't true. To prove it, he showed her their wedding photos. Eve was confused and couldn't understand anything. In frustration, she broke the mug. Peter got worried and spoke to their doctor, and we learn Eve had similar memory issues in the past, forgetting things and denying reality. Peter took her to the doctor, who told Eve that losing a baby can trigger emotional confusion, and she needs time to heal. Peter cared for her, but Eve kept feeling something was wrong. Her visions continued, and even the house felt strange. She had chosen a nursery earlier, and Peter now promised to renovate it. The next day at work, Eve found another woman sitting at her desk, the same woman she had seen before. Even her friends greeted this woman normally, making Eve feel like someone was stealing her identity. That evening at dinner, Eve asked about the girl. Peter and his boss said she needed rest, and that Renata had been working with them for a long time and would take over for a few days. Eve disliked this and walked out. Later, seeing Renata with Peter and the team, Eve accused her of being involved with Peter. Peter calmed her, saying Renata had always been part of the company. While heading home, they argued. Eve asked why she never met Renata before. Peter reminded her that during last year's cruise trip, Renata was with them, and he even invited Eve. But she refused. Peter showed Eve the trip photos, but nothing felt real to her. Her life seemed completely upside down, as if the memories Peter talked about belonged to someone else. She couldn't tell what was truth anymore, and even began doubting her own identity. Peter tried comforting her, saying she was the woman he loved. But Eve said the girl he married used to be full of life, someone who loved art, adventure, and freedom. I'm not that person now. He hugged her and called her Honey Bear, and that nickname made Eve suspicious. She felt Peter must have used it for Renata too, which upset her even more. Furious, Eve left the house and followed Renata to a friend's place. When Renata walked out and noticed her, she confronted Eve, asking why she was following her. Eve fired back, saying Renata was the one invading her life. During the heated exchange, Renata admitted she and Peter had dated briefly in the past, but claimed it meant nothing now. She told Eve that if she had doubts, she should talk to her husband instead of accusing her. Renata assumed Eve must have discovered their past dating history, but Eve had no idea about it. Renata then said Peter was right to call her unstable, and she turned to leave. Eve said, "Stay away from me." Renata looked back and said, "This life is mine now," then drove off in Eve's Jeep. Eve was shocked. How did Renata even have her keys? Renata disappeared, so Eve took her bicycle and rushed home. When she tried unlocking the front door, her key didn't work. She climbed in through a window and found Peter inside the bedroom with Renata. Seeing them together broke her completely. She ran outside crying while Peter looked confused and stressed. Inside the house, Eve realized none of her belongings were there anymore. She checked the drawers, but everything was gone. Peter even threatened to call the police if she didn't leave. Eve cried, saying he had locked her out of her own home and replaced her with another woman. But Peter told her the woman inside was his wife. Shocked, Eve showed him her empty hand. Her wedding ring was missing. The ring was now on Renata's finger. Eve couldn't understand what was happening, and Peter insisted he didn't recognize her at all. It felt as if Eve's life and Renata's life had suddenly switched places. Lost and terrified, Eve went to Chelsea's house, but Chelsea didn't believe anything she said. To her, Renata was the real Eve, her actual friend. Still, she let Eve sleep on her couch. Eve lay down, and Chelsea told her everything would be fine in the morning. The scene then shifts. Eve is now walking along the shore, disturbed by the noise of people nearby. But suddenly, the people vanish. Eve quietly sits in a fisherman's boat. The fisherman tells her she has a long journey ahead. The boat drifts into the ocean with her. Back at Chelsea's house, her dog stared at the empty couch and barked at the same spot where Eve had been lying. But no one was there. When Salvador and Chelsea came down, Chelsea also had no memory of Eve, almost like Eve had been erased from this world. The narration about the fisherman's wife returns. Then we see Renata and Peter living their new life. Renata becomes pregnant, fully taking Eve's place in this reality. Later, she gives birth, and both are very happy. One night, during a house party, Renata talks with Salvador. Peter feels she is flirting with him and confronts her. They argue. Renata wants to open a bakery on the island, but Peter says she won't have time with the baby. Renata feels Peter now sees their child as just a burden. Later that night, while crying outside, Renata senses someone near the shore. She sees a woman coming out of the water. Panicked, she calls Peter. He checks with a flashlight but sees nothing. But the audience sees someone hiding in the bushes. It's Eve. Everything is repeating exactly the same way it happened to Eve at the beginning of the film. The next day, Renata sees Eve outside her office and tells Peter because she's frightened. The same things that once happened to Eve are now happening to her. Someone is following her, and strange items appear in her home that she doesn't remember owning. Peter reminds her that they were married in Amsterdam, but Renata insists their wedding happened on the island and that they've never even been to Amsterdam. Peter shows her their wedding photos, but Renata remembers none of it. She consults the doctor, but nothing feels right. One day, Peter calls her by a nickname she doesn't recognize, and Renata can't understand why her husband is acting so strangely. Later, at a party, we see Eve watching Peter from a distance. When Peter gets home, Renata asks if he's having an affair, but Peter has no idea how to explain what's happening. Renata then mentions their baby, and Peter is shocked. He asks, "What baby?" Panicking, Renata runs to the nursery, only to find the room completely empty. According to Peter, they never had a child at all. Everything becomes extremely confusing. Reality itself seems to be shifting. Worried, Peter goes to a bar because Renata keeps rejecting everything he says. At the bar, he unexpectedly sees Eve, who is now living in Renata's reality. Peter tries to approach her, but Eve quietly walks away. When Peter stepped out of the bar, Renata was waiting angrily. She followed Eve in her car, and Eve ran toward the docks. Renata chased her with a knife. She demanded to know where her baby was, but Eve told her there was never a baby, and that this life didn't belong to Renata. Renata insisted she had worked hard to earn this life, and said it wasn't her fault Eve couldn't become a mother. She told Eve she had to be eliminated and slashed her leg. Shockingly, the wound appeared on both of them, as if they were one person, split into two identities. Renata dragged Eve into the water. Eve surfaced for a moment and saw a boat approaching, with a fisherman staring directly at her. Before she could understand anything, Renata attacked again. This is the same moment we saw at the beginning of the film. Renata tried to drown Eve, but she herself was also losing air. After a struggle, Renata stabbed Eve in the stomach, and the same wound appeared on Renata's body. Both women sank into the water. By morning, Eve washed up on the shore, unconscious. A native woman approached her. In the background, we hear a voice telling a story about a woman who chose the wrong path and felt she had no hope left, but that belief was wrong. Then we see Eve again, now living a new life as a singer. This is where the film ends. The film's deepest psychological layer is Eve's trauma around motherhood, her infertility, the pressure to get pregnant, the desire to be a mother, and the pain of miscarriage slowly break her from inside. These experiences create guilt, making her feel she was never enough. According to research and explainers, many women after miscarriage can experience dissociation, imagining another version of themselves, jealousy, self-blame, and even a split sense of identity. And the film shows Eve going through the same thing. All these emotions take a metaphysical shape. Renata becomes the version who can live the motherhood life, while Eve becomes the part of herself that feels broken. That's why the whole story feels like a trap to her. Besides this, Eve keeps sacrificing her life, dreams, and career, always following her husband's decisions. After moving to the island, she grows more isolated and quietly regrets her own choices. When a woman isn't happy with her life, she often wishes she could be someone else. The film gives that regret a real form. Renata appears as Eve's bold, confident version, living the life Eve once wanted but never chose.